It's the wild card weekend playoff DFS football and the Power Hour podcast. Got Barrett, John Proctor, who is drunk right now. What is going on?
What's up, man? Just, tilting NBA, tilting this NFL slate before it's even started. It's just this is the most awful slate I've ever seen in the history of mini slates. And some guy on Twitter today was like, "You're not playing cash games?" And I'm like, what? Why would anyone put themselves through sweating a cash game on this fucking awful slate? I don't know.
Dude, on a scale of woat to goat, this slate is Tavon Austin.
Oh yeah. It's like Tavon Austin when Kenny Britt is out and Patrick Peterson is shadowing him.
It's like beyond woat.
It's awful, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it. But
together, you and me.
We'll try.
All right.
We'll try.
Anything you want to bullshit about before we get into football? I think we're hanging out next weekend.
Yeah, I guess if we are. I don't know. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna come visit you and Quincy, that dude who does our write-ups for us.
All right. Well, let's
get to the sponsors.
We haven't had sponsors in months. Dude,
why doesn't anyone want to sponsor us?
Well, I stopped really trying to get them to. So.
All right. Well, our fake sponsor today is Roster Watch. It's a really great site. I've used it a few times. Really impressed with their optimized lineups. Shout out to Alex Dunlap. You can find him on Twitter at Alex Dunlap NFL. He's a great writer for them. He also does their Sirius show. Big fan of his work. Shout out to Ryan McDowell of Dynasty League Football. They got really a great cast of talents. Ryan especially. Big fan of their work. I think he's tuning into the show, or he said he might. And we're sponsored by Taco Bell gift cards. I know the holidays are over, but Valentine's Day is just around the corner. If you want to get your special somebody a great gift on Valentine's Day, how about Taco Bell gift cards? Dude, it'd be so cool if they just sent us free gift cards.
Yeah. I mean, I don't eat a Taco Bell, dude, but I would send them to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you're a lawyer. You're definitely not as poor as I am.
If I'm gonna eat food that's gonna wreck my insides, it's absolutely gonna be McDonald's.
as we know by your road trip to visiting me on my birthday.
Yeah. I ate 2 Big Macs and 4 McDoubles on my way.
I don't know if our listeners know that the bromance is real. This isn't just a podcast thing. Johnny's my boy.
Yeah, man.
All right, football?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I actually need to pull up which game is first. So,
it's the Woat game.
Yeah, that's right.
The Woat Bowl.
The Woat Bowl is first. And it is definitely the Woat Bowl.
You want to hear my take?
Yeah, man.
All right, ready? Lamar Miller. Next game.
Yeah, that's defenses? Well,
yeah. I mean, Texans defense. Actually, Raiders are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And Brock.
I think you can play
Brock is as bad as a rookie quarterback, third stringer making his first career start in the playoffs, kind of.
Oh, yeah. You mean Connor Cook on the other side?
Dude, he wasn't good enough to beat out Matt McGloin.
Right. And I've seen people on Twitter well, no one's going to play Connor Cook and Brock Osweiler. And it's well, yeah, no one's going to play them. Brock Osweiler has a 16-point ceiling. That's it.
Yeah, dude, no one's going to play Leonte Carew either. There's a reason no one's playing him.
Right. Yeah.
Contrarian's fun, but that's just
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit once we get to the Steelers game about and actually the next game too.
Dude,
Like
90% of our talk is going to be about the Steelers game.
Yeah, like the way. So I'll just real quick, the ways to be contrarian on these mini slates doesn't always mean you just play some bad play and hope he hits. The way to be contrarian is to be either over or under the field on someone who's massively owned or someone who you just think is under owned. So, if you think Lamar Miller at 20%, 30%, what he's going to be at is too low, then you load up on him, have 50% of him. And that's being contrarian. But, too much on this game. I think you can maybe consider Crabtree. He'll avoid AJ Boye, but even then, I think you're really pushing it.
Actually looking at this matchup a second time, you know who we have to talk about?
Will Fuller?
Tom Savage. Dude, I just got to say, I'd be out there playing that game. I know he's banged up. I know he's hurt. But this is your one chance, guy. I'd be out there starting Tom Savage's ex-girlfriend from Rutgers. If you're out there, slide into DMs at Scott Barrett DFB. All right.
Yeah, and we also forgot Laker Great just mentioned Fedorowicz. I think Fedorowicz is a good play.
I think no one's on him too.
Yeah, Oakland's really struggled against the tight end, for 2 years running now. So I think he's definitely in play, and he's a better play with Osweiler under center than he is with Savage. So that's a boost for him. Although there are some concerns that Khalil Mack will be rushing against the Texans' worst offensive lineman in this game. So there's a possibility that Fedorowicz could be used to do a little more blocking than he would normally. But,
DeAndre Hopkins had 11 targets, 123 yards last week. Not on him. The argument for Will Fuller is he's kind of the speedy little wide receiver. And Oakland's, their cornerbacks are slow, as we've seen them get beat by Brandon Cooks very early in the season and by a few other guys. You've struggled more with little, smaller wide receivers than big guys.
And they've struggled more with quick speed, quick, not fast, but quick receivers. I don't even know how to use my words, but I don't think that's Will Fuller. That's T.Y. Hilton. That's Steve Smith. I'm trying to think of a couple other guys they've given up big games to. But Fuller is kind of like a run straight down the field really fast. Right. Yeah, they struggled with Ted Ginn. I don't think Fuller is quite in the same category as those guys.
He's Ted Ginn. Are you kidding? Right down to the drops.
That's kind of true. But Ted Ginn, I think, has a little more short area quickness than Will Fuller.
And I do one of these, I think, every single podcast where, I throw out a contrarian guy and Johnny just trashes it dude, but he's bad. And I'm like, no, I know, but I'm saying because of – and then you're like, nah, he's bad next. And then I get blasted. But Latavius Murray is a contrarian play. No one is on him, and I get why they're not on him. He's losing all these snaps to Jalen Richard and D-Wash, a guy we love from the offseason. Any chance whatsoever that their recent uptick in volume was Oakland kind of saving him for the playoffs? It doesn't make sense because they were fighting for that bye, right? Better kind of scaling back the touches for him. He's going to get the touchdowns if they're there.
Yeah, he will. I mean, it's so hard with them because of the committee they've been doing. And then on top of that, the Texans have been pretty strong against the run the last 6 or 7 weeks or so. So it's not necessarily a good matchup. I know the Texans were a little weaker against the run to start the season, but they have come around on that. I don't know. I mean, do you want to play? It's like Latavius Murray's a guy that I want to talk myself into using him, and I keep coming short in convincing myself that I do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
He's like on my list of guys that I think will go overlooked, and then at the same time I'm like, do I even want to use him?
And then behind him, those two guys, their roles are both uncertain. Like, why would we play the two guys in the lesser of a 3 running back by committee?
I think DeAndre Washington is like picking up some steam too. So I don't think he's going to be as underowned as people think. Like Labs projects him at like 4%. I think it's going to be way higher. I think he cracks like maybe 10 because people missed out on that big game. Against the Colts? You can look at the game log. They'll be interested in that. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's a game that's a low total. It's going to be very slow. There's going to be lots of punting. And if he's getting a third of the carries when there's only going to be 20 carries to go around, what's that mean? You're hoping that Washington breaks off a 50-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, Richard and Washington have been kind of great at that this season. Posted a stat about like percentage of carries that went for X yardage. Both of them kept popping up like at the high end of that, as receivers as well. But yeah, really the top plays. I mean, Texans have the highest projection of any defense. Raiders are cheaper, but still in a nice matchup. Lamar Miller and a little bit of CJ Fedorowicz.
Yeah. It's like there's just not the upside. I just don't think is really there. Like you're hoping that one of these guys makes a big play after the catch, after a busted run, whatever. But it's not like either of these offenses are going to be like putting together offensive success.
Yeah, I mean, you're fine if you fade this game, but that's kind of what everyone else is doing too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Lamar Miller is probably the best play. He's had 2 weeks off. I think that's big for him. You look at the 2 weeks before he was off, 17, 22 DraftKings points. His last game against the Raiders had 104 yards and a touchdown. His downside is always that he's not really catching a whole lot of passes for whatever reason. But in a game where Houston is expected to win as a home favorite, I think you definitely want to have some Lamar Miller. Although I think he'll be the RB2 or RB3 in ownership in that range, probably 20 to 40%.
Yeah, I agree. Well said.
Anyone else you really want to discuss in this game?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the Lions at the Seahawks. This is a interesting game with the total on its way up. Opened at 43. It's up to 44. I think if I had to pick a game to go over its total, it would be this one. And I think Zach Zenner is the best play on the entire slate, points per dollar. You agree?
I 100% agree. I thought he was going to be contrarian, just because no one ever wants to play him, or white running backs in general.
Yeah, you didn't want to play him last week, asshole.
Well, all right, so yeah, we got to talk about that because I spent far too much time debating against you. My thing was there were so many cheap bell cow running backs opening up that I didn't want to go put a lot of stake in a guy who the last week only saw 60% of the team's running back touches. But this week is not like last week. Zach Zenner saw 100% of the team's running back snaps and 100% of the team's running back touches last week. That's arguably more than what we can project for Le'Veon Bell. That's the definition of a bell cow running back, the kind of guy that I'm always after. He's still low priced. Seattle's run defense is pretty good, but nowhere near as dominant as it has been in previous years. And he's going to get all the targets, all the running back targets. Definitely really high on him this week. He's, like Johnny said, my top value play of the week, and it's not close.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, everyone, they're talking about, Le'Veon Bell is the best play on the slate. I mean, Le'Veon Bell is probably who you can project to score the most points. But when Zach Zenner is less than half of his price and easily projectable to score half or more of his points, that means he's a better play. So I think if you're going to pick a guy to have in 100% of your lineups, it's Zach Zenner.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk Stafford a little bit. I think it's interesting that Stafford is just completely overlooked this week. He's sort of getting lumped in with Connor Cook and Brock Osweiler, and he's a much better play than either of them. Like worlds better than either of them. Pretty much everywhere you look has him projected under 10% ownership. It's not a great spot for him, but I think when you only have 8 quarterbacks to choose from, he should be probably a little more than 10% owned. Do you have any thoughts on Stafford?
What about do you have any stats on Earl Thomas being out?
Yeah. Seattle's been bad without Earl Thomas. I think they have maybe 1 interception since he's left.
Are you worried about the finger?
With Stafford? Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's not like Stafford is perfectly healthy. We don't know if he's 100% healthy, but no one is going to play him. The entire world says Stafford sucks. Stafford has been bad recently. Stafford only has 2 touchdowns over his last 3 games, and all that's 100% valid. But he's still a guy who we know can throw the ball 50 times in a game.
So Vegas thinks Seattle crushes Detroit. And Detroit's not a great team. They've lost their last 3 games, almost lost to the Bears the week before that. They're 0-5 against playoff teams. But I mean, Seattle hasn't been great either. Johnny, you want to talk about that? I know you were hating on Seattle earlier today.
Wasn't quite hating on them, but I mean, I think Seattle probably wins this game, but I don't think they should be 8 or 9 point favorites like you see in certain spots. And everyone says, well, Wilson's a better play than Stafford, or Rodgers is a better play than Stafford, or Big Ben is a better play than Stafford, and that's 100% true. But they're all going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times his ownership. And Stafford is a guy who can feasibly throw for 300 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. That's within his range of outcomes every single week he steps on the field. And if he does that, then he's going to smash his value at 5,700. And we look at Seattle, who they beat San Francisco by 2 points, which is bad.
They needed to win that game too.
Yeah, and they allowed Colin Kaepernick and Carson Palmer over the last 2 weeks to have over 100 QB ratings, and those are both not good quarterbacks. So the idea that Seattle's just going to smash them, I mean, they can't run the ball. Thomas Rawls is cooked, I guess. I don't know. The offensive line is atrocious. Russell Wilson's playing with a mechanical knee, but everyone wants to play Ebron. They want to play Zenner. They want to play Marvin, they want to play Bolden, but they don't want to play Stafford. You know, if all of those guys are going to be successful, then so is Stafford. If Stafford is not successful and Stafford gets completely smashed by Seattle and Seattle beats them by 10 points, then no one on the Lions is going to have any success. So I think you either fade the Lions or you need to have ownership on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, don't love Stafford this week, but I get your argument from an ownership standpoint. Certainly makes sense there. But let's talk a little bit about his receivers. So Golden Tate, revenge game narrative, and he's going to see Richard Sherman for the majority of his routes, but it's going to equate to only 35%, 40%. Not really on him, not on Marv, who's been terrible all season since week 4. I like Bolden. He's not a sexy play, but he's exactly the kind of guy you want to look at in short slate tournaments. He has 6 targets in 6 of his last 7 games. He's going to be low owned. Evan Silva tweeted this out the other day. He ranks third in NFL. He ranks third in the NFL in red zone targets and second in red zone catches. He scored a touchdown in 50% of his games. And this slate kind of reminds me of Thanksgiving short slate, where he really kind of swung lineups at his low price tag. And Vikings secondary kind of reminds me a lot of Seattle's.
Yeah, I think Sherman will shadow Tate, but I could be wrong.
Even in the slot?
Not in the slot, but Tate.
Yeah, okay.
Tate doesn't play. Tate only plays 20% in the slot nowadays.
30%.
Isn't Bolden there the most of the time?
Yeah, 28%. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bolden's like a full-time slot player. So I think that Bolden is a good play. I think he's picking up serious steam. I see a lot of people saying, he's the best value play. And he's certainly, I think, an interesting play, but he's going to need a touchdown to pay off every week. So, if Bolden is going to score a touchdown and another receiver is going to score a touchdown, then, I want to have some Stafford too. But the idea that Bolden is going to smash value, maybe, but he's definitely one of the better, cheaper options on the slate at wide receiver. Wide receiver is pretty gross. But here's the question, Scott. Bolden or Kenny Stills?
Oh, Stills, hands down. Right.
So you look at ceiling wise. I think Marvin Jones has a higher ceiling than Anquan Bolden. I don't think Bolden is going to go over 100 yards. I don't think he's even physically capable of it.
No, his upside is 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. His floor is 4 catches, 40 yards, no touchdown.
Yeah, he's solely touchdown based. Really,
oh, yeah.
You're hunting for a touchdown. So, Bolden or Eli Rogers?
Bolden.
So, those are the choices that you're sort of making. You have a lot of 4K receivers to pick from. So, Stills is someone I like a lot too. I might like Eli Rogers more than Bolden. I don't know. I'm still deciding there.
Bolden has the matchup this week, in the slot, avoiding Sherman, Sheed, Snead, whatever. But Ebron also kind of has that same matchup too over the middle, where Seattle's been weak. We know he doesn't catch touchdowns because that's what Anquan Bolden's for. But he's still low priced, going to get a decent amount of targets. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he has a ton of targets over his last 3 games that he's played. 18 targets over the last 2 weeks. And he's one of the few tight ends on the slate who could go over 100 yards. You're probably looking at Ebron, Graham, Cook, I think, are your 3 guys who could crack 100 yards. And yeah, Yohan was just mentioning Bolden does have a hand injury, but I believe he played with that last week, and went 4 for 57 and 1. So it's tough. It's tough, but Ebron or Bolden? I mean, they're the same price. Who would you play if you had to pick between those two?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I'm not really on too much of anyone outside of Zenner on Detroit.
Yeah, Zenner's definitely the best play. But you just have to know that the entire Detroit team is going to go under-owned. Like, all of them. No one's going to play Marvin. Ebron's going to be popular because tight end is really tough. But just know, I mean, Marvin went 5 for 76 against the Packers. So, if Sherman does shadow Tate, which I think he does, Marvin has definite opportunity. And Seattle's been getting beat deep with Earl Thomas out of the lineup. So just something to consider. Do you want to talk? You want to talk Seahawks side?
Yeah. Let me jump on this right away. So earlier today, I mortgaged my 13,000 follower Twitter account, betting on Doug Baldwin having a huge game. I said if he doesn't, I'm no longer tweeting about fantasy football. Strictly cat memes from here on out. And here's my reasoning.
You mean my reasoning?
What do you mean?
Scott's going to pretend like he found this out first.
What are you talking about? I mean, come on. It's not a revelation that Detroit's bad against slot wide receivers, but here's my long epic rant. Doug Baldwin's home away splits over the last 26 games. He averages 13.3 fantasy points per game away, 21.4 fantasy points per game at home. The Lions are giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers out of the slot. Opposing passers have the highest passer rating in the league when targeting wide receivers out of the slot. Quandre Diggs had one of the worst seasons ever by a nickel cornerback, allowing a 91.3 completion percentage, the highest ever by a cornerback in the PFF era. That's dating back all the way to 2006. Diggs ranked bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed per target, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed per route and coverage. PFF's 18th worst graded cornerback. He's on IR. On 10 targets this season, Asa Jackson has allowed 8 receptions for 86 yards and one touchdown. He replaced Diggs. He's now on IR. So that means Doug Baldwin will now run 75% of his routes against a guy who wasn't good enough to start over either of them. Adarius Barnes. Barnes is an undrafted rookie. He surrendered 7 receptions for 61 yards on 8 career targets and 61 career snaps. Detroit is allowing the most fantasy points per game, the second most fantasy points per target, the most touchdowns, and the third most yards to opposing wide receivers out of the slot. If Doug Baldwin wets the bed, I'm not sure why we do this fantasy thing.
Yeah, so I'm not even sure we're going to know who the Lions will be starting in the slot before someone just walks out onto the field and plays the nickel. But I also think there's I tweeted out on, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday, if anyone knew who the Lions were going to be starting in the slot. And RotoHack replied with a swinging gait like you would see at the train station. And he might be right. So I think we might see multiple guys out there. Maybe by the end of the game, you see Slay on Baldwin, but I don't think that he will be on him to start, at least. Slay has not moved into the slot since he returned from injury. He's played just a handful of snaps, like 2 or 3% of his snaps in the slot all season. Yeah. And that was really early. It came in the first couple of weeks. And you're looking at a team that has been getting shredded in the slot all season, and they still weren't moving him there. So I don't see why this is going to suddenly be different than the last few weeks. So yeah, Baldwin, I mean, I think he's definitely at risk because he's put up some shit games, and the Seahawks have looked like ass recently. But he's shown a 30 and 40 point ceiling, similar to Antonio Brown and Jordy Nelson and Beckham, any of these guys. So I think he has a good shot to outscore one or two or all of them. So he's a great leverage play. Sound about right?
I don't know. I zoned out. Are you talking about Paul Richardson?
No, Baldwin. I said he's a great leverage play off the expensive receivers because he has just as high of a ceiling.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's why I argued for him.
Yeah. And then the other receivers, I think Jimmy Graham's going to be pretty popular. Detroit has been shredded against the tight end. But Graham's kind of fallen off the last couple of weeks. Are you on Graham?
Yeah, to an extent. I kind of hitched my wagon to Doug Baldwin already, and it's too late for that. But
yeah, I mean, Russ Baldwin Graham stacks. I mean, is that in play?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Is CJ Procise playing?
Don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, you could even throw Alex Collins in there if you're hurting for some money. He's just been so much more efficient than Thomas Rawls, especially recently. Rawls is my boy, but he's just not healthy. Over the last 3 weeks, Rawls has 37 carries, 56 rushing yards, 2 receptions, and 5 receiving yards. Over the same span, Collins has 21 carries, 106 rushing yards, 8 receptions, and 56 receiving yards. Basically, he has over 2.5 times as many total yards as Rawls on 10 fewer touches. Perhaps that results in more volume. He'll also definitely get the bulk of the targets that would come via the running back position. He's kind of a super sneaky guy. Not too many people are talking about it. I kind of like him. You could even add him to that onslaught stack.
Here's the thing about Collins.
Yeah.
He sucks, but
he's been good lately.
He's been good, which is weird. He was probably the worst running back this preseason, like stone cold nuts worst running back this preseason. He was benched, I think, every single preseason game. But he's been okay on limited work recently. He's been better than Rawls, that's for sure.
He's been really good, man.
Yeah.
Last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's been a lot better than Rawls. I mean, can you play Thomas Rawls at all? Like, is he even?
Dude, he won the bet against San Francisco. You can't play him.
Yeah, I think
literally no one's done that but Todd Gurley.
He's averaging like 1 yard per carry.
Heading into week 17, San Francisco was allowing more fantasy points per game to opposing RB1s than Zeke Elliott scored all season.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was bad. I mean, he had that big game against Carolina, and it's just been downhill since then. So I don't know. I don't think he's healthy. So I'm not going to play him. I think Rawls is going to have like some legitimate ownership. So I think he's someone you can, if you're looking for someone to fade who's going to be 10 to 12% owned. I'm perfectly fine fading Rawls. If I was doing 100 lineups, I would have him on one.
How many Alex Collins would you have?
Probably more than one.
Yeah. Also, Paul Richardson, 8 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown over the last 2 weeks. Not really on him, but he's another one of those low-priced wide receivers you can look at.
Yeah, and it's if Baldwin is not getting Slay in the slot, then it's Richardson or Curse. We're not going to know which one's going to get him. They're just going to play sides probably.
Yeah.
So Richardson is the big play threat. Curse is sort of the value of Curse is that he's good in like the scramble drill. Like when Wilson is scrambling, he gets open. But are Wilson's scrambles going to be any good? I mean, Curse has 16 targets over the last 2 weeks. Paul Richardson has, I think, 12 targets over the last 2 weeks.
According to PFF, it's 10 targets.
Paul Richardson?
Yeah.
Okay. What about Curse?
I don't know.
He has a lot, man. I mean, these guys are getting targeted. So,
dude, but Curse is also like one of PFF's bottom 5 graded wide receivers. He's been legit terrible this year.
And one of the things that's really affected him is that his value has really been when Wilson's been out of the pocket, and Wilson has not really been out of the pocket. Pretty much when a play breaks down, Wilson just scrambles for a couple of yards because he knows that his mobility is not there. If Wilson is legitimately shedding the knee brace this weekend, that's the rumor.
Yo.
If he's legitimately shedding the knee brace, it's a boost to the entire Seattle offense. So that's something to pay attention to. I mean, we might not know that until like he's out on the field. But
Russ Wilson's passer rating when targeting Doug Baldwin is 119.7. When targeting Jermaine Kearse, it's 57.5. He's just been ass. Not on him, not really on Richardson. All aboard the Doug Baldwin train. Join me or cat memes for the next few weeks. Deal with it. I'm on Alex Collins too, to a lesser extent, as like a deep contrarian cheap guy. Jimmy Graham's fine. Zach Center. Anyone else?
I
Tanner
don't.
McAvoy.
No.
Preseason GOAT.
Are you in on either of these defenses?
Not really.
Yeah, I think Seattle had that big game against the Rams, and they got a bunch of sacks against Colin Kaepernick. But I mean, Colin Kaepernick sacks himself. So you look at the Cardinals, the Packers. They got lit up. I mean, they shut out the Panthers essentially and scored 8 DraftKings points. So the upside's not quite there. I think for Seattle right now, and I think they're going to be really highly owned. And then Detroit, their defense is just bad. So yeah, I wouldn't be on them either. I mean, would you have Seattle ownership? So if you have 100 lineups, Seattle ownership, I don't know. I'd probably have maybe 10, maybe 15.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have 0 Detroit though. Anything else on this one?
No.
All right. So let's talk Miami at Pittsburgh.
Oh boy.
If we want to talk a game where I think a team is going to get blown out, this is the game. Since Byron Maxwell has been out of the lineup, the Dolphins have been getting smashed. They allowed Tyrod Taylor to throw for his first 300-yard game of his career. They allowed Tom Brady to throw for 3 touchdowns on like 30 attempts. The last 72 attempts against them has come out to something like 610 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's like almost 10 yards and a touchdown per 10 attempts, which is a lot. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, so Pittsburgh's big 3 is probably going to be the 3 highest owned players at each of the positions. Antonio Brown, highest owned wide receiver. Le'Veon Bell, highest owned running back. Ben Roethlisberger, highest owned quarterback. Now that's really not without good reason. Miami has struggled badly against opposing quarterbacks, especially lately. No team has allowed more 30-point fantasy games to opposing quarterbacks than the Miami Dolphins. They have 4 of those 30 games. They have 4 of those games, 21% of all such games. Like you said, 3 of these games have come over the last 6 weeks to Colin Kaepernick, Tyrod Taylor, and Joe Flacco. Not exactly intimidating passers. They also allowed that 25.6 fantasy point per game to Tom Brady. Ben Roethlisberger's home away splits, as we know, he averaged 10.4 more fantasy points per game at home in 2014, 9 fantasy points per game more in 2015, and 11.7 fantasy points per game more at home in 2016. Dolphins are – this is a great tweet from Pat Thorman. The Dolphins are without their 3 highest graded pass coverage defenders. You just talked about Maxwell, who's PFF's number 10 graded cornerback in coverage. They're also without both safeties who picked off Roethlisberger in week 6. I had a tweet, just for the contrarians out there earlier in the week, really just saying that, like, if you wanted to get cute, in week 6 last time these two teams faced each other, Jay Ajayi rushed for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. He outscored the entire combination of Roethlisberger, Bell, and Brown in FanDuel. They won by 15 points. However, Miami was at home. Roethlisberger was just coming back from a knee injury. Byron Maxwell was healthy. Really, the only reason to fade Pittsburgh, I think, is ownership. Really, they just look like a team that's just going to absolutely smash this weekend.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Pittsburgh is Bell is going to be probably the highest owned running back in tournaments we've ever seen this year. So I think he's going to push 80% or so. And he's 10,300. That's really expensive. I mean, he's met that value 1, 2, 3, 4 times over his last 12 games. So, I mean, he is a lock probably to be the highest scoring running back. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's not just value with him. On this short slate, you really do need raw points as well. And he'd probably get you that. He by far the highest projection of any running back. Right.
But I guess my whole point is that if someone can make a points per dollar lineup without Le'Veon Bell that scores 3x salary, you will pass people with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, it's a matter of whether or not a lineup with Bell and Brown. I mean, you can't make a lineup with Bell, Brown, and Ben.
You can, and I've made several, and they're fantastic.
They're garbage,
and they all have Kenny Stills in it, and they're great.
So then, how do you put Doug Baldwin in?
Oh, I don't. That's the thing.
Right. So I mean, there are really good plays on this slate that you cannot use if you use all 3 of those guys. So, right, and like Laker just said in chat, the idea really is, can Beckham, Jordy, Baldwin, or Nelson outscore Le'Veon Bell?
Jordy won't. OBJ can.
Right. I think Brown can. I think Beckham can. I don't think Jordy will, but I think he could. It's within. Baldwin can. I mean, that's the thing, is that when you have 4 or 5 other guys with similar ceilings, he shouldn't be 80% owned in your lineups.
Listen, 80% is just ridiculous. I don't
insane.
care who that is. I'm going underweight on that every single time.
Yes, thank you.
So that's what we're going to do there.
I wish I could have gotten Soul Child on this tonight.
We got to get him on.
Me and him we're kind of fighting off the entire Twitterverse this afternoon on Le'Veon Bell ownership. He just tweeted out, he said, I don't care what kind of slate it is, who the player is, but when someone is $10,000 on an NFL slate and he's projected to be 80% owned, you should have less than the field. And I think he's 100% correct. So I think you're with me on that. Yeah?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. The thing is, there's multiple ways to attack this from a contrarian standpoint. Like you could have exposure to Matt Moore, paying down from Roethlisberger to get to him could give you all those Steelers guys, and then also maybe even like a Doug Baldwin type. That's kind of interesting, although I don't think Matt Moore's a good play from a projection standpoint, and Vegas certainly thinks he gets rocked. But this really could be one of those weekends that we saw like so often last year where the winning team had Ben, Brown, Bell, Pittsburgh defense. And then it didn't matter who the other guys were. That really could 100% happen. And I'm going to have lineups like that. I'm also going to have lineups with Matt Moore. Why not? Lineups where I fade Brown and Ben, and I hope Le'Veon Bell does all the damage. Then I'll have a few lineups without Bell, and then I'll have lineups where I might even fade Pittsburgh entirely, because guess what? If Pittsburgh wets the bed, then you are just so in the money. You've cleared out 66% of the field at least.
Right. And you have to think that you look at this. So the big NFL tournament is the $4. I don't even know what it is. Right. It's the $4 one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's the $27. So the quarter millionaire. I mean, I'm probably just going to math enter the 3 or 4 or whatever it is. But you look at this and you have 86,000 people. And if Bell is on 80% of those, then 60, 70,000 lineups are going to have Le'Veon Bell on them. If he goes down in the first quarter, God forbid, I don't want him to go down, but I mean, this isn't a guy who has had a perfect clean bill of health. Then 80% of lineups are completely dead. When your $10,000 player doesn't hit, your lineup is dead. Or he rushes for 80 yards, he catches 5 passes for 30 yards, and Big Ben goes for 405. Then those lineups are all dead. The lineups with just Ben and Brown and other guys are way ahead of you. I mean, there are outcomes where Bell scores 16 points, 18 points, 15 points, and the Steelers still win by 30. You know what I mean? Those are. I don't think Bell is a 90% chance to score 30 DraftKings points. Do you?
No, but again, I don't think that 3x matters that much. I just think it's 80% is ridiculous. The opportunity to get such an advantage on 8/10 of the field, you got to go underweight on him. I'm 100% with you there. I think a fantastic leverage play off of this entire Pittsburgh offense is Jay Ajayi. I mentioned what he did in week 6, how he just completely brutalized them. He also had 2 more games of 200 or more rushing yards. He's been fantastic this season. He ranks first among all running backs with at least 100 rushing attempts and yards after contact per attempt and missed tackles forced per attempt. He really wears down defenses towards the end of games. And Steelers have not been a good defense against opposing running backs by any stretch. Since that week 6, they're allowing 100 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown per game to opposing running backs, as well as 4.5 yards per carry, which ranks 8th most over that stretch. Again, it just goes back to, kind of thinking about correlation plays. And what that means here is if Ben were to struggle who then would likely benefit, and that would be Jay Ajayi running behind positive game script. I mean, I don't love him. He's not high in my projections. Vegas thinks they get creamed and all that, but it just makes sense from a game theory standpoint.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing too is like, I think Ben Roethlisberger is a better play than Le'Veon Bell in regards to like, a percentage chance that he's the highest scoring quarterback. He's been like he's been the stone nuts at home. I mean, what he has 3+ touchdowns in every game at home except when he played the Giants, and we know what the Giants are. I mean, like you don't throw multiple touchdown passes against the Giants.
No, sir.
And he was 11 yards away from having a 20+ DraftKings point game against the Giants, which probably would have been one of the best games against them this season. Ben did have, in fact, one of the better games against the Giants this season. So
I think that would have pushed him over Kirk Cousins like week 2 game. I think you're right.
Yeah. So I think Ben is probably, up there with Zenner with being one of the best plays on the slate. And he's going to be 30%, 20, 30, 40% owned. And Bell is going to be, 80% owned. So there are ways to leverage this slate. So you need to think about when you only have 4 games, you have to think about ownerships when you're doing this type of stuff. If you're only making one lineup, by all means play Ben and Bell and Brown. But if you're only playing one lineup, you shouldn't be playing a 4-game slate. You with me on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you want to talk like the fringe receivers in Pittsburgh? I mean, what do you?
You can do that.
Like Eli Rogers is getting like a lot of talk.
He got a lot of talk last week too.
The dude has what, like a 12, 15 point ceiling?
Dude, imagine like Antonio Brown somehow does nothing and Eli Rogers just loses his mind.
Kobe Hamilton.
Any Coates.
I mean, it's like this. So I looked at the last 2 years in the playoffs with Antonio Brown's numbers. Obviously Le'Veon Bell, I don't think he played in either of those. But he has over 100 yards in both of his last playoff games. And I think he has something like, 12 and 14 targets in those last 2 games. I mean, like Brown is like the dude in the playoffs for the Steelers. So I don't have any reason to believe he's going to have a bad game. But if he does, then I think Ben probably doesn't have a big game. You know what I mean? Like, who else is going to catch the ball?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
That's the thing with ancillary receivers on Pittsburgh is that, Le'Veon Bell's their second best wide receiver by a good margin.
Yeah.
And Ladarius Green is hurt, by the way.
Yep.
He's not playing, right?
He's not. He's very doubtful. Unless he gets cleared from the concussion protocol tomorrow, which is pretty unlikely, then no, he's not going to play. So, I mean, you're really looking. Rodgers is going to be like highly owned, I think, probably in the 20.
I disagree. I think it's Ben by a wide margin.
No. I think Eli Rogers.
Oh.
Eli Rogers is
Okay.
going to be 20 to 30% owned, maybe.
I hope so.
Maybe more. The talk is that now that Ladarius Green is out, that Eli Rogers is like a great play.
But he's been out.
Right. So his best game, Rogers' best game came when he scored a touchdown against the Bengals, because he scored a touchdown. So, six targets or so. He's not going to get that 10 target game that he got against the Ravens. It's not going to happen. back in week 6, 5, something like that. That's over, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so he's a guy I'm perfectly happy to be underweight on the field. Do you want Kobe Hamilton?
No.
Sammy Coates, Darius Hayward-Bay?
Dude, Sammy Coates didn't have hands before he cut his hands off.
Dude, I love just using like the my strong hand gif when people talk about Sammy Coates.
Dude,
like,
it's a GIF. It's not a GIF.
No, it's a GIF, but it's fine. So what about Xavier Grimble or Jesse James?
No.
Dude, you have to have a 2,500 tight end like in some lineups.
All right, you want to make the case for Xavier Grimble?
I don't want to. I want you to make the case. Like I was hoping.
I think you made it, and that's 2,500.
Yeah, I don't really want to play either of them. I mean, like, so if I have 100 lineups, I would have Xavier Grimble in one of them and Jesse James in one of them. I mean, dude, like, you gotta go to the barrel on some of these plays for this slate. Like, this slate is fucking bad, man.
Yeah.
Okay, Xavier Grimble or Clive Walford?
Walford.
All right. Well, okay. There's no Xavier Grimble or Luke Wilson.
Grimble, I guess.
Yeah. See, there are people discussing Luke Wilson.
That makes no sense.
He had 3 targets, 26 yards, touchdown last game, and a touchdown 2 weeks before that. I don't know. I mean, tight end is hard.
Deion Sims, bro, your boy.
We'll talk. Okay. So Deion Sims, is that the 2,500 tight end you're playing?
Yes.
He had 1 target last week.
Don't care. Every time I've mentioned him on this podcast, he scored at least 1 touchdown. Every time.
When I've been off of him?
Every time.
So then
now he's a lock just because of this. You have to be off of him.
No one's going to play him. That's for sure. Deion Sims or Will Tye?
Tye probably.
Yeah. See, man, dude, tight end is like really hard because Jimmy Graham and Eric Ebron are going to be like, they're going to take up like 50% of the ownership. And then you're sort of just, I mean, Jared Cook is going, we'll talk Jared Cook in a minute, but you're looking like the last 25% of ownership is like between like some serious scrubs. But
yeah, maybe just something like near even exposure to all the tight ends. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like a huge crapshoot.
Right.
But it's kind of how it always is at that position.
This is like tight end is normally bad, but this is like really bad. Because Graham's expensive, man. He's 5,300. He's and this is a slate where you're like fighting to fit players into lineups. So, Jared Cook's gonna be really popular. We'll talk about him.
Dude, just let me talk about Kenny Stills, bro.
So yeah. Go ahead and talk. I'll let you talk. Dolphins wide receivers.
Yeah, so a great contrarian addition to the Pittsburgh Big Three would be Kenny Stills, who's really affordable. And he makes sense given this game script. So if Pittsburgh smashes, makes sense that their top deep threat is going to be heavily targeted, a lot of air yards, target yards. So he makes a lot of sense there. He also has by far the best matchup of the 3. So Pittsburgh's slot cornerback, who should spend the majority of his time against Jarvis Landry, ranks second best in fantasy points allowed per route and coverage among all cornerbacks projected to start this week. Pittsburgh's left cornerback, Ross Cockrell, ranks third best. And their right cornerback, Artie Burns, is allowing the 7th most fantasy points per route in coverage of these starting cornerbacks. Parker's going to run 42% of his routes from Cockrell's side of the field, but Stills is only going to run 26% of his routes from that side of the field. So he definitely gets the better matchup there. Again, Cockrell is the tougher cornerback, and Burns is the weaker one. And then the other point with Stills is that if you look at his sample of games when Matt Moore has started, he's been better in every aspect. I had some tweets I put out earlier in the week about this, but from a target per game started standpoint, air yards, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, points per game, all better with Matt Moore starting. He averaged 8.8 fantasy points per game when Tannehill started, 15.0 fantasy points per game when Moore started. To put that in perspective, Jarvis Landry only averaged 1.6 fantasy points better, and Parker was well below that at 10.2 fantasy points per game. But still, Stills is by far the cheapest wide receiver. In terms of market share, target market share, up 6.9%. Air yard market share up 7.2%. Receiving yards, touchdowns, PPR market share, everything has gone up. I know it's a small sample size, but really no wide receiver has benefited more from Matt Moore starting. He's going to start Sunday. He's cheap. He's going to be low owned. He's a guy he has the game script. He's a guy I really, really love this week.
Want to hear something interesting?
Yeah.
Labs. So to start the week, Labs had his projected ownership 5 to 8%, something like that. I just looked. They're now projecting him at 17 to 20% ownership for Stills.
I'm not really too familiar with Labs. What made them go up so high? You think it's just like Twitter commentary?
So Levitan does a lot of their ownership projections. He's been killing it this year. He's been really, really good. But I don't know what to think about that. I know Stills is being talked about a lot, but here's the question. If he's going to be 20% owned, how much Stills would you want to have? Would you want to be double that? Well, I mean, would you want 40%? I think he's a really good play. I agree with you.
Yeah, and 40% or more. I really, really like Stills.
And here's the other question is do you just delete Eli Rogers from your lineups and play Kenny Stills?
I would, yeah. I'll have some Rogers, but
so that's kind of the 4,000 receiver is where you're going to have to hit this week.
Stills is cheaper than Bolden too, right? Bolden's 4,000.
Yeah, he's 200 cheaper. I mean but the 4K mark, you've got Devontae Parker, Marvin Jones. I mean,
Nope.
DK did a really good job with this, where they just kind of put all these guys around the same price. You got Kenny Stills is 3,800, Sterling Shepard is 4,800, Eli Rogers is 4K, Jermaine Kearse is 4K, Marvin Jones is 4,100, Anquan Bolden is 4K, Devontae Parker is 4,200, Victor Cruz is 3,800.
No.
So you're kind of just picking, and Will Fuller is 4,400. So you're kind of just picking between these guys. So I think my favorite's probably Kenny Stills. Sounds like yours probably is too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I was making one lineup just to throw into a $27 tournament, the 4K receiver I'm picking is Kenny Stills for sure.
Yep.
Agreed?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. I also like Jarvis Landry, though. I think he's interesting because he's down to 5,100. He got 12 targets last week. With them behind, do you like him? Do you like him too?
The matchup just really isn't that good. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Stills, which means not a lot of exposure to Landry.
Do we really think William Gay is actually good, though?
Yeah, I think so.
He's old.
Mike Clay's been on him for 2 years now.
He's old, though, right? He's in his 30s.
I don't know. He's been pretty shut down. If you look at it, I do the DFB matrix every week. I haven't done it recently, but if you look at it, it's pretty crazy. Let me see. I had it recently. Yeah, so to slot wide receivers, they're very above average. They're not giving up almost any fantasy points there. To right wide receivers, where Parker lines up on 42% of his routes, very above average there, near even. And then to left wide receivers, they're giving up more than the average amount of fantasy points per target, fantasy points per game.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. And I think
the difference between them has been negligible since
Right.
Matt Moore took over.
Right. No.
I just want stills. That's it. Not going to get cute with Landry. I get the arguments. Your boy Soul Child had him as his top ranked wide receiver this week. And that's a good set. Is there anyone else you want to talk about in this game?
I don't. Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh defense a lot.
All right, yeah, let's go to the next one.
Before we get to that, I just want to we forgot to do it. Shout out to last week's Listener League winners. Our boy FH Nixon took home the top spot with 185 points. He had Matt Ryan, Drawn, Ingram, Adams, Julio Jones, Jordy Nelson, and Travis Kelce. You didn't really do much. And Cardinals defense. Super sharp lineup. He's also sponsoring this week's podcast. Check out his music. Check him out on Twitter. He's awesome. Number 2 was Inselman1. Never heard of you. So apologies for not going in depth. Your boy Soul Child came in 3rd place. Brian M 731 came in 4th, and our boy Ryan, the only Hanch, never going to pronounce that right, came in 5th. Again, the Listener League proves to be super sharp, more sharp than some of our competition's Listener Leagues, I might even add. But yeah, shout out to all you guys. Great job. And now we can talk into the best, most exciting game of the week.
So how badly is Eli Manning going to break your heart?
It doesn't matter. He can't do it. It's the defense.
On a level of 1 to Eli Manning face, how heartbroken will you be? When Eli Manning pick sixes this game away.
Dude, as heartbroken as when Tom Savage's ex-girlfriend shut me down.
Okay.
Yeah, so, he's sucked this year. Yeah, I'm a Giants fan, but I'm not.
He's been so bad.
He's been terrible, playing some of the worst football in a really long time. Then again, he's autistic. People forget that. He's immune to pressure. This is when he steps up and all other quarterbacks falter. They're like, Eli, you just won the Super Bowl. How does it feel? Huh? What? Dude, he retard strength, just gonna lose his mind this week, I hope. But really, everyone knows we're banking on the defense. And the defense has been amazing by almost every single metric. They're one of the best, if not the best, opposing passer rating allowed, opposing yards per carry, DVOA, pressures, sacks, turnovers, everything. They've been fantastic, amazing. Aaron Rodgers' worst game in terms of passer rating came against the Giants, and that was well before the Giants really morphed into this dominant defense that we've seen from them in recent weeks. Is JPP going to play, Johnny?
No, he's out.
He's out. Still, doesn't matter. They've been awesome. They've been fantastic. Shut down Cousins last week. Really, it was embarrassing to watch. Again, Perkins had a 100-yard game last week, but I really think it's going to be a committee. That's what the beat writers are talking about. I've heard some respected people in the industry saying it's a toss-up between Paul Perkins and Zach Zenner. No, it's not. It's Zach Zenner by a wide margin. Perkins might get a 60-40 split, but it's still a committee. He's good, but as Mike Clay has been ranting about for the past few weeks, really not that good. ranks pretty low in all important metrics: yards after contact, missed tackles generated. He does have that nice, impressive jump cut move, and he does seem pretty explosive. He was the most explosive eligible to be drafted running back in college last season. And I do like him as a talent, but just not someone I'm really all that excited about. How many times have you been burnt by Giants running backs? Why do you think this week is going to be any different? It's not.
Remember the time that we used all the Rashad Jennings to end last season?
That was amazing. That actually worked out well for us.
That's not now, though.
Yeah, no, not now. And what else? Yeah, Eli's going to suck. And really, I want to make an argument for Sterling Shepard just because Green Bay's secondary is so bad. But I really think
bad deep.
What?
They're bad.
Yeah,
they get beat deep.
They kind of get beat everywhere, man. They're just that bad. But the thing is, I don't think the Giants' offense does anything if Odell Beckham doesn't lose his mind.
That's where we're going. So I was looking at Eli's game log, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, here's the big game when he scored 29 DraftKings points against the Ravens. And he had 3 touchdowns and 400 yards. And Beckham had what? 225 and 2?
Yep.
So literally 50% or more of his best production game came all from Beckham. So it's like you can get all of Eli's production through Beckham, but people want to play Eli. Like, do you want to play Eli? I want to have like none of him.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I want to be overweight on Beckham and have none of the Eli.
Yep.
And so I've been getting, I posted my Labs wide receiver article where I basically said the Packers get smashed by wide receivers. They get smashed deep, especially on the right side of the field. McAdoo likes to move Beckham around, depending on the matchups. So we probably see a lot of Beckham on the right side of the field. People were saying, well, what if they move Ladarius Gunter? I don't think Ladarius Gunter is any issue at all.
Nope.
And I don't think the safety play in Green Bay is all that good either. So I'm not really concerned.
Yeah. So since week 6, Green Bay has allowed the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, more than any other team. Adam Thielen's 44.6 fantasy points in week 16 against Green Bay was the 35th most ever by a wide receiver. Green Bay has allowed 3 of the top 15 highest scoring fantasy weeks to opposing wide receivers, most of any defense. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Pierre Garçon, Alshon Jeffrey, Cole Beasley, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu. All of these players have had their best weeks against Green Bay. Granted, some of these players are their team's number 2 or their slot receiver, which could bode well for Sterling Shepard. But again, I don't give a shit. Eli Manning has a 106.1 passer rating when targeting Odell Beckham Jr. When targeting everyone else, he has a passer rating of 83.3. That's garbage. That's terrible. That's almost unheard of. Like, Matt Ryan has a better passer rating when he's targeting everyone else rather than Julio Jones. You see that a lot with the elite wide receivers. There's just so much pressure on them, and these quarterbacks are just jamming the ball into them that their passer rating when targeting the elite wide receivers is typically lower. But you don't see that with Beckham. The thing is, he's just that good. Like I said, he had the most missed tackles forced of any wide receiver second most since 2007. He's just unstoppable. Defenses know the Giants are trying everything they can to get him the ball, and it doesn't matter. Those are still super effective targets, and that's not the case when it's going anywhere else. I think the Giants either ride Beckham to success or they just completely falter. I want Beckham. Don't want too much Shepard. Although the matchup does make sense, it's just really I think it's just everything on Beckham's shoulders this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I prefer Beckham to Eli by far. That's, I mean, if Eli has any success, it's because Beckham had success. And I would rather roster Stafford and Beckham than Eli and Beckham. I mean, that's just, I think there's ways to differentiate. I'd rather roster Roethlisberger, Brown, and Beckham than Eli, Brown, and Beckham. You know, I mean, there's just like,
dude, I don't want Eli, man. He's just been bad.
No, I don't either, man. I think you can get 70% of his production or so from Beckham.
Dude, and even playoff Eli wasn't that great.
They were like flukes, dude. Just ask all the Giants or ask all the Patriots fans in our chat.
It was defense, man, and that's what's going to win it this week.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Right. Yeah. And when Eli, like, you know, gets sack fumbled 3 times, that doesn't hurt Beckham's stats. But no, I mean, Eli will be lower owned, but I think he might go a little higher owned than, I think people are starting to talk themselves into Eli. Here's a question. Eli, Stafford, Moore, rank them.
Are we talking projections or game theory involved?
Just like where you would want to own them.
I think I want Moore the most of the 3, just from a game theory perspective.
And then
Roethlisberger, and then the thing with maybe Manning, just because, you know, you could double stack OBJ and Shepard, but it's close. Those guys are tight.
Can't wait
double stack with Stafford.
Can't wait for Stafford to win me a GPP. But no, so I think Moore is going to be more popular than he should be. I think he will be similarly owned to Eli and more owned than Stafford. And I think Moore doesn't have a whole lot of a ceiling. You know, I want a 300-yard bonus, man. You know? That's what I want.
Yeah.
No? I don't think Moore is like a 300-yard guy.
Yeah, but I mean, he is in the. So what's the over/under on that game versus the over/under on this game?
I mean, most of pretty much all the under teams, like the teams expected to lose, are projected to score around 19 points.
Yeah.
19, 18, 18, 17. So we're looking at pretty close projections for the underdogs. Sound about.
Right. You want to talk Green Bay?
Yeah.
I'm shitting on Eli. That's my guy. That's my quarterback, man.
Yeah. So Jordy, I'm gonna let you talk Jordy after I just say probably get shadowed by Janoris Jenkins, and then he'll see Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie in the slot. Do you think Jordy has a game as successful as his ownership will expect?
No, man. I talked about this last week after he kind of got shut down by Darius Slay. Aaron Rodgers does not target wide receivers in really tough cornerback matchups. Granted, Jordy Nelson was targeted 46 times last time he played. He still only caught 4 receptions. I guess it's kind of different with the Giants because they have 2 elite shutdown cornerbacks. Really, DRC and Jenkins have been amazing. I'm sorry, he had 13 targets, caught 4, 38 yards, and a touchdown last time he played the Giants. But no, still, I think he gets avoided. Really, let me pull up the numbers on the Giants cornerbacks right now. Janoris Jenkins is our number 8 graded cornerback. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is our number 3 graded cornerback. And both of them rank top 11 in opposing passer rating. They've been fantastic. Aaron Rodgers had his worst game, arguably, against the Giants, at least in terms of passer rating he did. And again, that was before this Giants defense really stepped their game up to the next level. My issue with the Giants secondary is Eli Apple has not been good. I don't care what anyone says. And I think the Giants are better off kind of at keeping DRC outside, but he's not going to be. He's going to be in the slot.
He'll be in the slot.
So we want the wide receiver who's going up against Eli Apple.
It will be in 2 wide sets, which the Packers, I don't think have run since like Nam. It will be Rodgers, Cromartie, and Janoris Jenkins on the outside. The reason that Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie has been outside recently is because Jenkins hasn't played.
Yeah.
When Jenkins plays, Cromartie plays in the slot.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll do again this weekend. I don't see why they're going to change it. That's when they've been the most dominant.
Dude, DRC's been amazing outside. Like all of his interceptions have come outside.
He's good in the slot too, though. Because
this is a top 5 graded cornerback. Both these guys are lights out. I don't expect Jordy to see the kind of volume he saw early in the season. Like I said, Aaron kind of steers clear of guys in tough matchups, but he also hasn't performed well against tougher cornerbacks. I think he learned his lesson last time, and I don't think he's going to go back to Jordy. Really, the guys I'm looking at are Adams for the percentage of routes he gets against Eli Apple. And I like Geronimo Allison a lot, despite the DRC matchup.
Did you talk to Roger Splits against good and bad cornerbacks?
Yeah, but I couldn't pull it up.
All right. Basically, Rodgers has he's smashed against bad cornerbacks. So, the reason they use Cromartie in the slot is because he's so fucking fast. And, he'll often be, sort of in the wrong spot. But he's so fast that it doesn't matter. He can recover and still catch somebody even if he, started to take the wrong route. It's remarkable. He's pretty awesome.
All right, I pulled it up. In 2016, Aaron Rodgers has a 121.5 passer rating when targeting cornerbacks with a grade of 1 or less. Cornerbacks graded 1 or more, he has a passer rating of 80.1. So that's a stark difference there, which really makes me think he's going to go out of his way to target Eli Apple, who's by far been the Giants' worst cornerback of the 3. So again, it makes me like Adams, has me kind of off Jordy, and Geronimo Allison's interesting. Cobb's ruled out, right? Or extremely doubtful.
I think he's a game time decision, man. Yeah. We have late swap though, And
Jenkins is definitely playing, right? He practiced all week.
He played in week 17.
Yeah, there was a flare up with his back or something. The last meeting or Tuesday, McAdoo was like, "We'll see. We'll check on his status later."
He said he was sore. McAdoo's a fucking idiot, dude. You guys need a new head coach. What head coach plays his injured top cornerback in week 17? And
who was hurt.
Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, who has been injured off and on all season. But anyways, they're all expected to play. The only guy who is not expected to play is JPP. He is ruled out. Everybody else is expected to play. So
I love how I never check injury reports, and I'm just just tell me what it is.
I know, dude. You didn't even know that the Lions didn't have a slot cornerback anymore.
I knew that.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so yeah, this is not a good spot for Aaron Rodgers in the sense that he's throwing, to Jordy, but they don't have to throw for 4 touchdowns to beat the Giants. So we watched last week. Rodgers avoided Jordy when Slay was following him. So that was really interesting to see it firsthand. I know you had talked about it all year, Scott, but I'm watching an Island game and I'm watching Rodgers not throw at Darius Slay. And so it was really interesting to see it actually happen. So it's definitely something that could happen this weekend. I think it makes Devontae Adams really, really interesting if he's in the slot, or if Geronimo Allison is in the slot and Devontae Adams is against Eli Apple. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so Devontae Adams is going to go way under ownership compared to Jordy. He's bad, but I think he could outscore Jordy again this week, and then you're smashing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want a Packers running back?
Yeah, I'll have some exposure to Ty Montgomery. Sure.
You know that he got benched for like running the wrong route?
Yeah, I mean, wait, running the wrong route?
So like they ran
He's a wide receiver.
So they ran a screen pass in the beginning of the second quarter last week, and like the offensive lineman went to the left and like Montgomery went to the right, and like Rodgers threw the ball at Montgomery and it hit him in the back and just went down on the ground. But like even if he had caught the ball, he would have been like completely obliterated. So then they benched him, and that's why Ripkowski caught that touchdown pass.
Oh,
weird stuff, man.
Do you want Ripkowski?
We go back to like this slate being awful. Like, you know,
dude, I'm always gonna have exposure to the white running back in a short slate.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, you look at Montgomery against the Lions. I mean, you can certainly see Ripkowski is going to be the goal line back. I think you know that. So if they are getting
think back to the Thanksgiving short slate. The Matt Asiata lineup smashed.
Yeah, I mean, if Ripkowski gets goal line touchdowns,
Asiata it up right now.
Yep, he's another one of those 4,100 guys, dude.
He's like a more athletic Matt Asiata.
DK purposely made everyone 4,100 range. Like Alfred Blue 4,300, Ripkowski 4,100. You know, Rashad Jennings 4,200, Paul Perkins 4,100. Paul Perkins or Aaron Ripkowski? Obviously Paul Perkins, but I think Ripkowski is like in play, right?
Yeah.
Because he's going to get like, if he scores a touchdown, like you're good. I think.
Yeah. He's like the Anquan Bolden of running backs this week.
Yes. That's a good comparison. Yeah, I mean, I think like you can delete like Alfred Blue, Thomas Rawls, Jalen Richard. I mean, are you interested in Damian Williams?
No. I don't want to get too cute, you know?
I know. I mean, there's talk of like playing him.
I mean, the game script.
He had a bad fumble. Yeah, he had a bad fumble last week, but I mean, he is quote unquote the passing back, right? I mean, he's 3,600. Yeah. He's in the same range.
Yep.
So I don't know. I probably won't use him, but I wouldn't.
Talk about how this slate sucks.
You want to talk about it again? Kenyon Drake. I mean, he's in the same sort of category as Damian Williams. Dwayne Washington, I think you can delete completely. And I mean, I think it helps to narrow down a little bit guys that are completely not in play. There's a lot of wide receivers that are not in play. Geronimo Allison, would you play him or would you play Devontae Parker if Randall Cobb is ruled out?
Yeah, I would. Despite the tough matchup, he's just his price is so low. And then, you know, he's not going to get DRC on every single route. You know, they'll have, you know, a linebacker will come in to cover him on some routes. And, you know, he's just been really great the last 2 weeks. He's run 71% of his routes from the slot. He's had 12 targets, 8 receptions, 157 yards, and 1 touchdown. Those 157 yards are more than double what Adams had over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think you definitely win the yardage game with Allison, but I think the touchdown hunt, you're more likely to get multiple touchdowns from Davante Adams. I think is sort of where those two fall.
Yeah,
you agree? I mean, even though Davante Adams keeps like dropping the touchdowns in the end zone, they keep throwing it to him. So, he has 3 games with multiple touchdown catches. He has lots of touchdowns this season.
Dude, I don't know why you don't use Allison in the end zone more. He's 6'3", 200 pounds.
They did last week. He caught an end zone touchdown. It was on a scramble drill though, so I don't know how much that holds versus Davante Adams. Davante Adams and Jordy are definitely the top 2 reads in the end zone, but Jordy's got a tough matchup, man. So he's somebody I would be underweight on the field.
All right, Jared Cook.
Oh God. I mean, he's in play, man. He has 8, 5, and 8 targets over the last 3 weeks. No? I mean, are you?
And like we said, Giants' second cornerbacks are amazing. They're freaking fantastic. But the Giants have struggled to opposing tight ends this year. They rank what was it, bottom 5 in DVOA against tight ends. They're allowing the 11th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends this season. Tight ends have accounted for 25% of the Giants' total receiving fantasy points allowed, which ranks 6th most. They've allowed the 6th most targets and receptions and the 4th most yards to opposing tight ends. I get it. I like it. I get it.
I mean, he's in play. And, there was this weird, Rodgers interview where he said something like, Jared Cook has been instrumental in their resurgence or whatever it is. He said that. And, Rodgers was, never nice to anyone.
They're 8-2. So here's the thing. They're 8-2 in games that Cook played, but Rodgers' passer rating is worse when targeting Cook than anyone else, including guys like Adams, Cobb, Jordy, Geronimo Allison, and barely better than Richard Rodgers. So I don't know if it's necessarily as a passer, but they have been more effective.
I'm just telling you that Rodgers went out of his way to say he's a good thing for the offense or something like that. But
yeah, and he's notoriously a douche.
Right, exactly. So it's something to consider. I like Cook. I think he's in a good spot. He's getting tons of talk though. He's going to be really highly owned. He'll probably be the 3rd highest owned tight end on the slate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's a better play than Eric Ebron, who's a similar price, but he's definitely in play. It's a good matchup, great matchup. Someone you definitely want ownership to. I don't know if I will have 25% ownership like the field might, but he does make a lot of things work. That's for sure. And he's definitely someone you can use.
Yep.
I don't know if we have either defenses in this one. I'm not really excited about either one. I think it's interesting.
Giants super contrarian.
Yeah, that's super, super contrarian.
But they're great. They're really so good.
Yeah, I mean they are, but it's Rodgers. And I think one thing that's interesting about this game is that 70% of the bets are coming in on the over, and the total hasn't moved at all. So Vegas doesn't think this game is going to blow over this total. So I wouldn't expect this game to go much over 44.5. And the Steelers total has come down 2 points. it looks like it's probably going to be a lower scoring wild card weekend than people might project. If you think Eli's going to throw a pick six, Packers D maybe.
Yeah, maybe run it back with Jeff Janis for that double dip.
Yeah, for the kickoff touchdown. Yeah, don't play Jeff Janis
as a gunner. Yeah, no, never played
that. Anybody else you're considering, man?
Nah, I think we did a good job. Are we gonna make some lineups together this week? Or tonight,
I think so.
Tomorrow?
I think so. Just guys, don't play Connor Cook. Don't play Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And if we're wrong, I still don't care. Don't play them.
Zenner Stills were two of our biggest takeaways as value guys.
Yep.
Beckham. Yeah, Brown and Beckham.
And Doug Baldwin.
And especially Doug Baldwin.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think those are some of the top plays. I think Devontae Adams is really interesting. He's a really nice pivot off of Jordy, who I think will be twice as owned. He was a nice pivot last week too. This is a similar spot where there's a top coverage corner who will probably be on Jordy. So, Any interest in Amari Cooper, who probably draws AJ Boye most of the time?
No, honestly, like if it was a neutral cornerback matchup for both of the wide receivers, I'd lean Amari. But no, Boye has been fantastic this year.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm probably fading the Texans passing game, but most of the Raiders contrarian play. Latavius, you're looking.
Bro, you're trying so hard to push this podcast to 2 hours right now.
No, I don't know. I'm just trying to sum it all up because I know we were all over the place.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts,
the first game mostly besides Lamar.
Yep.
Second game was Doug Zenner as the two main takeaways.
Yep.
Third game was underweight on Bell.
Yep.
But all three of those guys are highest in our projections. Stills, I don't know. What else?
Yeah, be overweight on the Steelers passing game, underweight on Bell. Stills, underweight on Jordy.
Overweight on Beckham.
Yep. Sound about right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure if Tavon Austin is available in your player pool that you do not play him and ever. And good luck this weekend. Peace.